Captain Forest here. In today's video, I'm going to be going over both these combatants to see who would win, more often not, in a cross-verse situation. Batman versus Cyclops. If you guys are new to my channel, please leave a like, comment down below, and of course subscribe for the content. But anyway, I'm going to talk about Batman, and I'm going to talk about Cyclops afterwards, and I'm going to give my thoughts near the end of the video. So starting off with attack potency for Batman. So Batman would scale to the likes of Green Arrow, who was able to take a massive explosion that could be seen from Earth, and this was couched around the mountain level ranges of AP. And Batman would also scale to Midnighter, who took a big explosion himself, which was couched around the island level ranges. So there's some upgrades for Batman in terms of AP, so you can get him higher into those ranges instead of using town or large town level metas. Now, when it comes to speed, Batman would easily scale to likes of Black Canary, who is able to combat Wonder Woman and tag her within a nanosecond, which was couched around the 4.3 times speed of light, aka FTL. It's pretty consistent for Batman to react to light-based attacks. He's done it on numerous occasions. So that's going to wrap up Batman's stats. I'm going to go ahead and dive in and talk about his utility belt. Now, before I get into the nitty-gritty of his utility belt and a lot of the items he likes to use in character, I'm not going to go over every single one because the video would take hours and I'd rather not do that. I'm only going to be talking about the more important, aspects of his arsenal, and if I need to bring up anything near my analysis, I will do that. So in terms of his arsenal, Batman carries a wide range of practical and offensive equipment, such as batarangs for slicing, stabbing, or disarming his opponents, explosive batarangs for destructive force, electric batarangs and a taser, flashbangs and smoke bombs to blind his opponents, tear gas and darts to put you to sleep. He also carries sticky nets and sticky goo, and he also carries cryogenic batarangs to freeze the opponent, sonic emitters to cause excruciating pain to the opponent's ear, and Batman also carries metal batarangs too in combat. Batman also carries hook shots to get to places or to use on his opponents, and a bolas and other equipment for takedowns and to restrain the opponent. So that's pretty much just the basic gist of his gear. There's probably some little things that I probably may mention near the end of the video, but that's pretty much it for the standard arsenal. I'm going to talk a little bit about his skill. So Batman is easily a master at all forms of martial arts. Batman has fought relative to the likes of Karate Kid, who has mastered every single martial art up until the 31st century, which is very impressive. The way Batman fights and his approach to fights is quite similar to Black Panther. Batman will also analyze and look for micro expressions or any flaws or weaknesses on his opponents, which will allow him to target said weak spots and take the opponent down. Batman also knows how to perform pressure point strikes, and Batman himself has instinctive reaction and precognition, which in turn is tied with his skill, allowing him to stay steps ahead of his opponents in combat. Another thing I want to mention as well before I move on, Batman's suit also has, built-in protections, so if anyone tries to tamper with his suit, it will go off and electrocute the opponent. The suit actually has like a little barrier on it, so it protects him from any damages. That's why people question, why does Batman have his, his face visible? Just like his nose and his mouth. That is actually protected. There's like a little barrier that protects him. So Batman's suit is just laced with a lot of like booby traps, gadgets and gizmos, and a lot of like small little intricate things that are very useful in many situations. So that's going to pretty much just round up Batman. I'm going to go ahead and move on and talk about Cyclops. Now, in terms of attack potency, physically, Cyclops would also scale to the likes of Wolverine, as they both have harmed each other on a number of occasions. Wolverine has his own direct feat, where he also took an explosion which was couched around the mountain level ranges, and Cyclops also did battle with superior Spider-Man and endured attacks from him and was able to stagger him. A suppressed Spider-Man has a feat where he took an explosion which was couched around the island level ranges, so there's some pretty nice AP ranges for Cyclops. Now let's move over to speed. So in terms of speed, Cyclops is easily FTL. It can react to Wolverine, who's able to react to Cyclops' optic blast, and this feat was calced around the 2 times the speed of light. Credits to Hellfire Productions for doing this calc, and Cyclops was also fast enough to tag a suppressed Spider-Man with his optic blast, and Spider-Man has casual speed feats where he's dodged multiple laser beams, and that feat was calced around the 3.6 times the speed of light, aka FTL. And if you want to take the speed feat higher, there's also some other scaling you could use, and that comes from Spider-Man 2099, who has a speed feat where he was able to dodge lasers, which was also couched around the 9.4 times the speed of light, which is around FTL. So pretty much Spider-Man upscales from those characters and just casually, and you can get Cyclops to those levels of speed. Now that's going to wrap up, of course, Cyclops in terms of his physical AP. I'm going to dive in and talk about his optic blast potency, and then talk about more about him, and then I'm going to give my analysis on who I think wins more often than not in a cross-verse situation. Now, as for the potency behind Cyclops' optic blast, it does range. So from the low to mid frequencies, it can easily reach the city to mountain level regions of attack potency. His lower to mid frequencies can level mountains pretty casually, and he can also power up a city with just as energy from the optic blast, which is pretty impressive. Now, as for Cyclops' full powered optic blast, it is shown to have higher scaling and potency in comparison to his weaker beams. So as for low end feats for his full powered optic blast, it was stated to be able to rip a small planet in half. So we've got some planetary scaling at least for his optic blast, his full powered version. Now for his mid to higher end blasts of scaling, it was able to push back and burn Green Skull Hulk's skin. His full powered optic blast can also hurt Classic Hulk. This has also been hinted about his full powered optic blast being able to definitely hang out with the Herald tiers. It's even stated that it could, potentially even rival that of Thor, Hulk, some other characters too, but those are just statements. It all comes down to feats as well, so depends on your interpretation. But I have more things to go over and more feats to cover for the optic blast, the full powered at least. So there's some more showings for his full powered optic blast. It's been shown that he was able to press Jean Grey's PSI barriers, as she even notes that she was literally using all her strength to keep the barrier up to prevent the full powered optic blast from completely vaporizing her and Wolverine and other characters who she was trying to protect around her barrier. There was another occasion where an avatar of Dormammu got lit up by the full powered optic blast. So overall, his low to mid frequencies of optic blasts can reach at least the city to mountain plus potentially even higher ranges of attack potency, and his full powered optic blast would range from the low ends of planetary ranges to Altiversal plus, high Altiversal plus, to even boundless. Depending on arguments you use and based on what you find more consistent, it could be argued that the full powered optic blast at its absolute peak, full peak, can even be argued extraversal tiers, but obviously that is a very big stretch. Consistently, it's fine to say Altiversal. It's definitely, as the terms I like to use, mid creation level at least. It definitely has the capacity to hurt the heavy hitters when Cyclops is not suppressing the potency behind his optic blast. Cyclops, he can control the potency of his optic blast. He can fire at a low frequency, a mild frequency, and a full powered one, which is more amplified and destructive, but it makes him a bit tired. Cyclops can also increase the range and the radius of his optic blast to create a widespread to tag multiple enemies, and he can perform an area of effect with a full powered optic blast if need be. Cyclops can also use his optic blast as a shield to spread out his optic blast to cancel out two beams that were fired from Grotesque's gem. Cyclops' optic blast can disintegrate objects. It's even stated that he has the range advantage in most situations, as the optic blast can reach around 270 plus meters, which is pretty far. That's very impressive. His blasts can also blind you if you're too close to him. He can also BFR people and objects by blasting the ground, causing the force back from the beam to blast you away. Cyclops can also deflect objects with his optic blast, and it's also been stated by Beast that Cyclops is the master of the optic arts. And Jean notes that the X-Men have perfected their powers, which is very impressive for Cyclops in terms of skill. He's very skilled with his mutant ability. He's an absolute master at it. Cyclops has demonstrated a ton of remarkable accuracy feats and skill with his optic blast, such as ricocheting his opponent's blast to take out his foes. He can also split his beams to pressure and tag multiple opponents. Cyclops is able to skillfully disarm his opponents with his optic blast. He did it to Thor, causing Mjolnir to bounce out of his hand and clap Iron Man in the head. And he's able to literally tag an airborne foe by ricocheting his shot from another person. And even when Magneto reflected the blast from Cyclops, it still tags him. So Cyclops is just that many steps ahead of his opponents, which is very impressive. And Cyclops can also position his optic blast to hit things on a microscopic level, and he can also use his optic blast tactically to get his foes off guard by blasting Machine behind Grotesque
which blows up and tags him. Cyclops can also use his Optic Blast to launch himself away from harm's way, and he can also use his Optic Blast like telekinesis too. And constantly, Cyclops is improving his Optic Blast against moving targets per week by 4%. Cyclops can also propel himself from the ground. He's demonstrated really masterful control with his Optic Blast, and his pinpoint precision is so insane. He was able to precisely shoot through a small crack into the ruby armor, causing it to ricochet and hit the guy wearing it, despite the fact that the ruby armor completely nullifies his Optic Blast. And even while drunk, Cyclops' accuracy is still on par. It's still good. He's still able to tag a glass ball in the air. Cyclops will target vital areas with his Optic Blast, so he will target vulnerable areas. He also has info analysis in his own right, which I'll talk more about. Cyclops can also blast a hole in the ground, cause you to fall. He made Juggernaut fall into the ground as well. He's also shown incredible acrobatics along with impressive accuracy skills with Optic Blast. He also notes that his Optic Blast gets stronger over the years, so he can use his Optic Blast for longer. So let's move on to Cyclops' gear. Now, if Cyclops cannot physically activate his visor, Cyclops can activate a button on his glove, which opens up his visor, allowing him to shoot out his Optic Blast. He also carries some ruby quartz contact lenses in emergencies, and if his visor is stolen or compromised, he also carries a pair of ruby quartz glasses to help control and regulate his Optic Blast. Cyclops is very smart, very strategic, and very tactical in combat. Cyclops is always analyzing and observing his opponent's power and capabilities, while at the same time calculating and coming up with ways to defeat them in combat. Cyclops also has precognition. He's able to stay a step ahead of a dinosaur, and he can also operate on instincts too. Jean and Wolverine have noted that Cyclops remains calm and stoic and never panics in tough situations. So he's a very strong leader, has great leadership skills, and he's a very competent fighter.
Okay folks, I'm going to go ahead and give my thoughts on who I think wins more often than not in a crossfit situation. So when it comes to attack potency, I think they're pretty relative. I think they're able to physically harm each other. They both have shown similar AP feats, or they scale to other characters who have performed these feats. So when it comes to AP, pretty safe to say that they're pretty relative. Speed, the same thing can be argued for speed as well. However, you could argue Cyclops being slightly faster just due to higher calcs, but I don't think the gap is that big, especially with the distance and standard battle assumptions, as both combatants will be fighting in New York and there'll be a 20-meter distance, so Batman and Cyclops have time to do things. Now, when it comes to weaponry, obviously Batman's gear can definitely harm Cyclops as well, so I wanted to include that too, especially with the nymph metal batarangs and his other standard arsenal. Let's go ahead and talk more into this. So how will the fight, traverse, and how would it go? With Cyclops, I'm going to talk a little bit about him. Cyclops has lots of ways to kind of take victory. His main bread and butter, because he's quite similar to Batman, he's extremely tactical. He's one of the biggest advocates for strategy and using his strategic mindset and being able to place himself in situations and being able to get himself out of situations, and he does this with his mutant powers. Cyclops, with his Optic Blast, he's an extremely masterful user of the Optic Blast. Even in small cramped conditions, Cyclops is able to utilize his Optic Blast very, very accurately. He can literally ricochet off objects to hit the opponent. He can finesse the opponent. He can fake a trick shot, and the trick shot can end up hitting the opponent while they're off guard. So he has insane feats when it comes to using his Optic Blast. He's extremely resourceful in those departments. Cyclops himself is also people don't realize this, but Cyclops actually has really good senses. He's able to operate blind, so he can fight opponents when he's compromised, when he can't use his Optic Blast, because he's trained himself to do this. Whenever he's placed in a situation where somebody tries to compromise his ruby quartz glasses, his visors as well, Cyclops will always be able to operate even without it. It's just when he's not prepared. Sometimes if it gets off guarded, sometimes he'll try and, he'll try to control it when it goes like out of control. Like literally it does happen in combat where if his visor is knocked off, he ends up like kind of shooting it elsewhere because he can't control the output when his glasses are off, because obviously it's like a constant perpetual flow of energy coming from his eyes. But of course he has ways to kind of deal with that, so I don't think it's going to be a huge setback, but it's definitely an advantage for Batman if Batman decides to go for that. But I'll talk a little bit about Batman in a moment. Now Cyclops does have some skill feats as well. He is proficient in some martial arts. He definitely knows a way around in combat, but his main usage is his optic blast, and he will use this to his advantage. He will blast the environment. If he can't deal with an opponent who's too slippery, too fast, that's when he starts to resort to like AoE or widespread and things of that nature. But in character he usually starts off with low frequency or mid frequency depending on what the situation calls. Now I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about Batman. So Batman's biggest advantage is his stealth and his skill. If they was to fight just a skill only match, without a doubt I would bet all my money, I'd bet all my savings, I'd bet literally my whole finance on Batman when it comes to skill. The skill gap is just non-existent, bro. Like that's how big it is. Like if it came down to skill, Batman would literally turn Cyclops into a wheelchair. He'd turn him into like a piñata. He'd turn him into a pretzel. He would easily embarrass Cyclops when it comes to skill. So there is no contentions or no objections from me when it comes to skill. I think that's one of the biggest advantages that Batman has going into this. So if it comes down to CQC, close quarters combat, and they start fighting, that's an issue. Like Cyclops will easily get finessed and bullied if it came down to skill. Stealth is also a big advantage for Batman. Batman will be able to hide in the shadows. He has really good stealth. Like people really underestimate him. He's literally able to get past like superheroes who have like heightened senses and awareness. He's literally been able to get the drop on Superman. He's he embarrassed other superheroes with impressive senses and enhanced senses and being able to hear little like sounds and stuff like that. Like that's how great Batman's stealth is. And he's able to literally, he has this really cool trick where even if he's like running towards you, just like that, he can literally disappear right from your peripheral vision, so you won't be able to literally like see him. That's how crazy his stealth is. He'll be able to hide really quickly. That's how good his stealth is. And I think if it came down to a situation, knowing Batman has like years of knowledge and experience, and like his observational skills, his investigative skills, his like incredible, rich and wealthy knowledge of combat. He knows how to read an opponent. He will pinpoint weaknesses. He will pick up on microscopic flaws and movements. So he knows how to read an opponent and what type of opponent he's dealing with. So if it came down to a situation where Cyclops is, firing off optic blasts, Batman will use that to his advantage and get him into a secluded area and pretty much use his stealth to get past Cyclops. Granted, Cyclops does have some enhanced senses. He's able to fight while blind and he'll use his senses. However, Batman will get around those senses very easily. Batman has really good feats of him getting past people's senses, as I mentioned before, getting past Superman, getting past even the other Justice League members, so he'd be able to do just fine. Batman also has his arsenal. He has, many forms of batarangs, ice batarangs. He has his nymph metal batarangs. He has explosive batarangs. He has smoke grenades. He has a ton of restrictive gear that can definitely restrain and restrict Cyclops. And Batman will pick up and pretty much analyze that, like, Cyclops is heavily reliant on his ruby quartz glasses, his visor of course, so Batman will pick up on that weakness and he will definitely be going for the visor. He will throw batarangs to try and disarm and remove the visor. In the confrontation, like 10 meters or 20 meters away, Cyclops is definitely going to start firing off optic blasts. Batman is going to use his acrobatics. He's going to bounce around. He's going to start jumping off trees, trying to get in close, and if he gets in close, I think that's GG. I think Batman would take victory more often than not, and he can also take victory from a distance, especially with his like gear. If he throws a batarang, especially he can throw his batarang in a way where you can't hear it. Like, that's how like insane he is. And if he gets the drop on Cyclops and gets him off guard and hits that visor, that's gonna give Batman enough time to get in there and whoop his ass, because even if Cyclops for a brief moment has to nurse and try to like get his optic blast under control, it's too late by then. Batman is just gonna whoop him. And me personally, I'm gonna give victory to Batman with some difficulty. I definitely think Cyclops, when it comes to combat, especially with his optic blast, he's gonna force Batman to have to move around a lot, and he's gonna force him to use stealth and use other things in his arsenal. And overall, Batman, again, this isn't his first rodeo. He knows how to dispatch of opponents. He knows how to read opponents like their books, and his precognitive abilities, his instinctive reaction. Batman just has ways to get around the optic blast very easy, and he'd know how to get out of those situations just fine. So I gotta give victory to Batman. I'd say mid difficulty. I don't think it's a low diff. I think it's quite competitive, but those are my reasonings. He has a lot going into this fight, and Cyclops just lacks in certain departments. But yes, just another thing, if Cyclops does hit Batman with an optic blast, that is a GG, by the way, because the optic blast is just really powerful. Even at low frequency, it just takes one hit, but I don't think those blasts are going to hit Batman at all. Batman will be able to just see them coming and get past it multiple times. But yes, folks, that's my thoughts. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please remember to leave a like, comment down below, and of course subscribe for further content. It's been real. I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.